Welcome to Preparing for Pecha Kucha. My name is Kristen Bivens, and I'm the Head of Education and Training in the Department of Clinical Research at the University of Bern.
My name is Daniela Verschoor. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the DCR. During the webinar, we will cover guidelines and suggestions for preparing, designing, and practicing for a Pecha Kucha presentation about a clinical research study.
We have one overarching goal for the webinar: applying guidelines and suggestions for preparing, designing, and practicing for a Pecha Kucha presentation about a clinical research study.
To apply our guidelines and suggestions, we thought you might need the three objectives. The first is to implement a preparation, design, and practice suggestion for a Pecha Kucha presentation about clinical research.
The second objective is developing an engaging Pecha Kucha script about clinical research. And the third objective involves selecting appropriate visuals to complement the spoken part of Pecha Kucha presentations about clinical research.
Let's begin with a Pecha Kucha about Pecha Kucha.
Do you have the time for Pecha Kucha perfection? Well, probably not right at this moment. But over the next 20 slides and from the webinar content that follows, you'll see how you can achieve timing perfection for your Pecha Kucha by planning and practicing. Pecha Kucha is conversational. In Japanese, it means chit-chat. It is a presentation of 20 slides with 20 images and no or minimal text. The goal of Pecha Kucha is to convey concise information to an audience about an interesting topic. Pecha Kucha requires precision and practice. Presenters spend 20 seconds or less on each slide, and then the slide automatically advances. Practice helps you to gain and maintain the attention and interest of your audience for the duration of 6 minutes and 40 seconds. Create an outline or topic for each slide, then write a script to prepare to give a Pecha Kucha. For me, I can share about 2 sentences of information per slide, which is about 50 words or fewer per slide. Pecha Kucha presentations do not contain title slides. Like a desert without trees, Pecha Kucha slides contain either no or very minimal text, and we actually recommend no text whatsoever. Pecha Kucha slides need images that complement what you say for the 20 seconds while you are on that slide. Start your Pecha Kucha presentation with an interesting provocation about your topic or your research question or your hypothesis. Try to get the audience's attention with the first slide. Use an image that complements the approach, the provocation, question, or hypothesis that you take. Find visuals open for use in the public domain or with Creative Commons licenses. You can also buy copyrights or licenses for images, or you can take visual works with attribution if explicit permission from the copyright holder is not required. You want the audience focused on what you say, not what they see. Since slides are set to automatically transition or move to the next one after 20 seconds, the images you select should easily complement what you say during the slide's 20-second duration. The current slide contains too much information for an audience to process in 20 seconds. I'm intentionally talking for the full 20 seconds, so you'll possibly note how rushed or uncomfortable this slide, or this slide of slides, is when compared with the others. If it helps, think about this slide when choosing images. Do you have a clear beginning, middle, and end of your story? As you organize your slides, choose images and align your slides with the content in your script. Think about the overall story you're telling about your topic, if it helps. Put your slides in sort view in PowerPoint. Engage your audience by telling them what they need to know within the 6 minutes and 40 seconds. You'll likely sift and sort through several drafts of your Pecha Kucha script. To help, ask yourself 2 questions. Am I telling my audience what they need to know, or am I telling them what I want to tell them? Pecha Kucha requires presenters to make choices ahead of time that intentionally highlight certain elements of a story about a topic. It also demands we think concretely about our audience in advance and how they might engage or possibly disengage with the content we present. Practice helps perfect performance and adjust the spoken rhythm or cadence of your voice. Start by ensuring the script text for each slide is fewer than 20 seconds. I aimed for 18 seconds per slide when I practiced. Remember to carefully select information. It is likely you'll have to cut content from your script, which is fine. Audience members during Pecha Kucha presentations fully understand you are limited to 20 seconds per slide. Pecha Kucha is conversational and conversation promoting for later. Visual literacy is a set of abilities for effectively finding, interpreting, evaluating, using, and/or creating images. For images, you want to ethically source them as well as make sure they are rhetorically appropriate for your purpose, which requires visual literacy when choosing images. Ask questions about your images you choose to determine if the images are rhetorically appropriate. If you try to understand rhetorical elements of an image or visual, ask a few questions about it. What is its purpose? Does it fit the context I plan to use it in? And how do I anticipate my audience will receive it? Consider Pecha Kucha information as amuse-bouche, or bite-sized, meant to be easily digested in 20 seconds. However, the images and visuals you choose are bite-sized. The images should take up all or nearly all of the slide or the full screen. The brilliance of the 20-second automatically advancing slides includes not having to think about the timing of the slides. They're already set. Some Pecha Kucha guidance recommends avoiding animations, which actually interferes with the 20-second advance by adding more time. We agree, no animations. For a tip-top Pecha Kucha presentation, practice, practice, practice. Write an outline, write a script, and choose rhetorically appropriate visuals. Make your Pecha Kucha conversational by rehearsing. Rehearsing helps you know when to pause or emphasize a word or leave time to make eye contact with your audience. Each slide builds upon the previous one to tell a story about a topic. Pecha Kucha perfection isn't about the topic. It's in your delivery and in the connection you make with your audience. So, do you have the time for Pecha Kucha perfection? You do if you plan and practice.
Thank you so much for the video, Kristen. I think it was very clear and informative, and it gives a very good idea of what Pecha Kucha is. But I can imagine it took some time to prepare this.
Thank you, Danny. Yes, it certainly took some time to prepare the Pecha Kucha on Pecha Kucha. The easy part was the outline in the script. Choosing the visuals, then refining my script so the images made what I thought was easy sense to an audience took a bit more time.
As we showed in the video, it's good to develop an outline for your Pecha Kucha. For this, you can ask yourself 5 different questions.
And we can see these questions on the slide right now. First, how should you structure your presentation? What storytelling elements can you bring to the table? What do you want to convey, or what is your core message? What image could fit with my core message? And finally, where can I find these images?
So let's start with the first question. How should you structure your presentation? Think about your Pecha Kucha presentation as a form of a story. You need a beginning, a middle, and an ending, and all parts of the story need to be clear and covered.
Keep in mind that Pecha Kucha presentations are meant to be conversational, or they promote conversation. As I stated during the Pecha Kucha, whether you heard it or not, your audience knows you can't fit in all parts of your study in 6 minutes and 40 seconds.
For a Pecha Kucha presentation about clinical research, we recommend including an introduction with the background information that quickly moves your audience to the problem of what your research addresses and what your main message is.
Since Pecha Kucha presentations promote conversations after presentations, or they can complement your clinical research poster that already contains additional information, we suggest including only the main results and relevant discussion about 2 or 3 main points, along with 2 or 3 slides of conclusion.
As you might have noticed, even if you couldn't hear, you could read, Kristen started and ended with the same question. You might use similar framing in your Pecha Kucha. It helps trust the red line through your Pecha Kucha presentation.
When I was writing the script from the outline, I noticed I could speak about 45 to 50 words in about 18 to 20 seconds. If it is helpful, we recommend the beginning of your Pecha Kucha be no more than 3 slides, and then the ending should be no more than 3 slides. So, since most of your story happens in the middle, you'll have 14 slides to work with if you follow that suggestion.
And of course, you can adjust and adapt our recommendations as you want or how you would think it would fit your story. However, if you're approaching more than 20% of your slides at the beginning or ending, you might find yourself a bit of trouble that you don't have enough room for the middle of your story about your clinical research study.
Speaking of the storytelling in your Pecha Kucha is meant to be conversational. For example, you can ask a provocative question. The conversation is also meant to be intentional.
What exactly do you mean by intentional, Kristen?
Well, on the screen on the left-hand side, you can see the writer Anton Chekhov. He famously gave advice about story elements. Chekhov advised that if a gun appears in the first act of a play, it better fire by the end of the play. Such advice is often interpreted to mean that every element someone includes in a story must have a purpose. It's the same for Pecha Kucha.
I like that. So you mean every word you speak and image you choose must have a reason or a purpose for your Pecha Kucha presentation. It helps engage your audience and it could cover a part of why you do this presentation, or in our case, the research.
Absolutely, Danny. So if a Pecha Kucha presenter chooses a certain anecdote or asks a specific or provocative question at the beginning, then to best frame the entire Pecha Kucha from start to finish, the speaker should return to the same strategy or approach by the end of the presentation.
The next topic on our list is defining our core message. In theory, this should not be different than any other presentation. We could probably give a whole other seminar about this topic alone, but the timing for Pecha Kucha is very specific. It is important to clearly define your message, and also your content in your Pecha Kucha should either align with your message or support it. It will help you move the story forward from the beginning to the end.
To help you find or define your core message, try answering these 6 questions about your clinical research study.
If you're trying to determine what appropriate or suitable or reasonable content is to include, we recommend you answering the 6 following questions. As a tip, you can think about the first 3 questions which help you develop your main message. Well, questions 4 to 6 will help you explain your project significance. By answering these 6 questions, it can help you filter through and make decisions about what results or other concepts to present in your Pecha Kucha presentation.
As a reminder, your audience knows you are limited on time during your Pecha Kucha. I recommend designing your Pecha Kucha from your clinical research study, not trying to cram all parts of your clinical research study into your Pecha Kucha story. To me, that would simply be an impossible task. So again, we advise you to design your Pecha Kucha as a story, not as a paper.
Pecha Kucha is all about telling your story with supporting images. Finding these images that can complement your story might be the hardest bit of preparing a Pecha Kucha.
Here are some tips that help me. In the Pecha Kucha about Pecha Kucha, I spoke about visual literacy. To me, many of the images showed what I thought represented the point I made on each slide. For example, what you can see on the screen, the image of the barren desert. But when I practiced my Pecha Kucha in front of a family member, they were a little bit confused.
And what exactly were they confused about?
Well, that was my fault, Danny. The main sentence for the slide or topic sentence wasn't the first one I read for that slide. It was the second one. So on the left-hand part of the screen, you can see what I originally wrote. And I started with Pecha Kucha slides need images that complement what you say for the 20 seconds while you're on that slide. And it was paired with the image of the desert.
So you decided to move the sentence that came up to a bit earlier, like a desert without trees.
Yes. To my mind, the slide made sense both ways, but my family member who listened to me practice the Pecha Kucha about Pecha Kucha thought it made more sense to an audience who maybe needed a little help getting to the main point of the slide faster. I ended up moving the sentence earlier. So the revised portion read like this: like a desert without trees, Pecha Kucha slides contain either no or very minimal text.
So the first point you make is it might not be that obvious for your audience how your slide connects to what you're saying. So you recommend providing a simile or a metaphor to get you there. And you also said you rehearsed with some family members, so it would be good to have a test audience to see if it connects properly.
Yes, you're right, Danny. I strongly suspect that people right now are thinking about how they're going to present their clinical research without using text or numbers.
To be honest, when I heard that people had to give a Pecha Kucha about their clinical research, I was thinking exactly the same. I cannot imagine giving a presentation about my research, what I did, in just images.
Remember, it's likely you have your poster about clinical research you can refer to. The purpose of Pecha Kucha is storytelling. It's not a scientific article or data set. Tell a story about your data. It's good practice for another genre of popular writing for the public. It's called a lay summary or plain language summary, and many people listening to this right now might be familiar with those genres of writing for the public.
I can see some similarities. If you mean that you're meeting different audiences with different expectations with the information.
Exactly, Danny. I mean, when you write or publish a scientific article, you know reviewers and readers have certain expectations for the article. For example, you'll follow IMRAD, introduction, methods, results, and discussion. You'll follow that structure. It's expected in a scientific article. There's typically not a storytelling flow in scientific articles, although there can be. It's still unusual.
I see what you mean there, yeah.
It goes back to the earlier point that the audience knows you only have 20 seconds per slide and 20 slides. They know you can't show them everything you'd want to in a poster or paper about your clinical research study. It basically means that the Pecha Kucha presenters, or the listeners right now, you also have to adjust your expectations a little about the kind and depth of content you're able to include in your Pecha Kucha presentation.
As Kristen mentioned in the Pecha Kucha about Pecha Kucha, you want to use ethically sourced images. These are images which have a Creative Commons license or that can work that can be used with attribution that do not explicitly require permission from the copyright holder. Other kinds of images that can be used are the ones in the public domain or images with no right reserved. But where exactly can you find these? Can you help us with that, Kirsten?
I can. And that's a really good question, Danny. You can search for them on different platforms. We offer a short list of what was helpful for us. Because of our inexperience, we actually do not recommend generating images from AI. Instead, these are our recommendations. We recommend Adobe Stock and also perhaps a mixture from Unsplash or Pixabay or Google Advanced Images, and of course, the Creative Commons.
Where did you find your images, Kristen?
Well, that is a really good question, Danny. I had the expectation that I would be able to find most of the images I would use in the Pecha Kucha about Pecha Kucha as open source. So I searched Creative Commons. And I was actually really surprised how long it took me to find images. For me, it took probably 3 times longer to find the right images when compared with how long it took me to write the outline and script combined. But I'm a writer, so maybe that helped a little bit. Some people listening right now might be better with visuals, for example, than I am.
So for you, it was not necessarily finding the image, but finding the right image.
Exactly, Danny. Then I had to make sure the lead sentence I wrote or the topic sentence I wrote for each slide complemented or went with whatever image I had chosen. I was a little surprised how much revision I had to make to my script once I had my images finalized.
All in all, how much time do you think you spent on this?
I would say over the course of a week, it probably took, once my research was done, it probably took 6 or 7 hours. In truth, I ended up getting a free 30-day trial from Adobe Stock and using the 10 free photos that came with that trial. The photos were higher quality, and I found it easier to search Adobe Stock than Creative Commons, for example. Of course, there are many, many other places to get stock photos to purchase for use. A quick Google search will likely send someone in the right direction.
Did you know that the New England Journal of Medicine have an illustrated glossary?
I recently saw it.
So now that you gathered all the information about the outline, organization of the information is key for preparing a Pecha Kucha. We recommend using a spreadsheet or Word document with the following: the slide number, the topic of that slide, the image or description of the image you want to use for that slide, and your script. In that way, you have everything together and you can easily practice that.
We also recommend starting with the topic and writing the script, then adding ideas for the image. So when you get all your ideas out, you can write these ideas and rearrange and then refine them if you need to. Writing it out will help you organize your thinking about your Pecha Kucha presentation, especially if you're like me and you make sense of the world in words and then with images.
Also, try to keep the script not longer than 2 sentences per slide and a total of 45 to 50 words. Even if you can fit more words or sentences, you should also consider that your audience needs some time to process about what you're saying and what they were seeing.
We also recommend trying to keep your speaking to 18 seconds or so per slide, not the full 20 seconds.
And instead of using a slide for references, you can keep them as a list with you.
Since Pecha Kucha uses 20 seconds per slide and your slides automatically advance, you want to set it up correctly in your PowerPoint so that you prepare and practice with the right timing.
This can fairly easily be done. Maybe you already know this, but in PowerPoint, you can go to transition on the top of your screen, and then on the complete right side, there is a section timings. You select after, and then you set the timer to 20 seconds, and you make sure that it applies to all. When you think you have your whole presentation designed and your script is fully written, you need to practice. Like Kristen said in the Pecha Kucha about Pecha Kucha, it's practice, practice, even more practice than you would think. You need to perfect your timings, and this might be hard because many of us are way more relaxed in their practice rounds, but once we present, we talk all way faster, or some people even talk way slower. If you notice that you don't have the same pace as your practice round, just take a moment to think and breathe.
Furthermore, if you have to rush through your text, you likely have too much information you want to cover, and you might need to reevaluate your script. I know I had to do that several times. For presenting, you could bring some notes with just some keywords. So when needed, you can just have a quick look at your notes, especially now since there's no text on your slides, which can help you or jog your memory with what you wanted to say on that specific slide.
You could also choose to just write your script on note cards and use those to practice.
During the presentation, you can use your note cards. I don't think an expectation of your audience is that you have all of your script memorized. You're not actors, for example. But since you rehearse your Pecha Kucha, you'll still be able to make good eye contact with your audience during the presentation and only use the note cards if you need to.
Just a thing to think of, we often write way smaller than what we would need when we give a presentation. You don't want to have your note cards 20 centimeters away from your eyes. So if you decide to go for note cards, just write large enough that you can see it on an appropriate distance.
We recommend practicing in front of a mirror with your note cards and getting your pacing down first. Then, since the timing is automatic for the slides, you don't need to think about those. They'll automatically advance with or without you.
So in sum, start with your script and then choose your images.
Practicing will make all the difference for your Pecha Kucha presentation. We recommend practicing in front of the mirror. Then once your timing is perfected, practice with your script and slides in front of the mirror again.